I wish I knew. Ninth, the old man's retirement estate was a large, beetling mansion of cut gray granite and limestone on verdant Bainbridge Island, west of Seattle across the Puget Sound. It resembled a large English manor house from the Queen Anne period, sporting gabled roofs, diamond-paned windows, and ivy-covered walls, with a large artificial lake and park garden at the rear. The great house had been built in the late part of the 19th century by one of Seattle's lumber barons. In the early 1920s, it had been purchased and expanded by Mr. Roy Olmsted, Seattle's primary bootlegger and the man who quenched the thirst of millions on the West Coast during Prohibition. The cellars still concealed large secret chambers where cases of liquor and mammoth hogsheads of ale smuggled down from Canada had been stored prior to shipment to points onward. In the latter part of the 20th century, the mansion had served as the love nest of a computer tycoon. Then it had been the crash pad of a rock star who blew his girlfriend's head off with a shotgun in one of the bedrooms and then stepped into the jacuzzi where he slit his own wrists. The ghost of the rock star and the murdered groupie were alleged to walk the halls at night wailing. He like Z-ghosts, the two boss men, H.A. Covington, stood in an office off the mansion's vestibule with a white uniformed blonde young nurse from Quebec. Beside her stood a tall, crew-cut SS lieutenant in dress black with silver piping, as required by the formal nature of his post. The nurse was speaking. I fear Zem, but he say he finds Zare caterwauling restful. He say it reminds him of how we beat Zem and destroy Zare world. He is a very strange man. He always was, said Dawn. But he is very much the true gentleman, responded the French girl. Most old men think Z can pinch my bottom and get away with it because they are old. This patient has treated me with nothing but courtesy and respect. Yeah, he's kinder odd, agreed the SS man. Course, I guess you get that way at his age. Christ on a raft, you been through everything he done been through. I reckon you got a right to get a little funny in the head. Weird in what way? Asked Redmond. Well now, you look at this house, said the officer, gesturing around him. 70-some-odd rooms, but we use about a dozen of them. The rest of them are closed, up with sheets over the furniture. The old man himself lives upstairs in only 3 rooms that used to be servants' quarters, 1 bedroom and a living room and a small kitchen, with a toilet and shower down the hall. We got a cordon bleu chef here, just for him, but he insists on trying to cook his own food. Major Ferguson, the OIC here, had to get permission from the Home Office to disconnect his stove in his rooms. He might start a fire. Now he sneaks into the main kitchen at night and we'll find him boiling a can of beans. He says living like that makes him feel at home. Really weird. They say he was from one of the richest families in North Carolina, left there and joined the American Army at 17, and he's been living dirt poor ever since. They say he laughed when the feds put him in his first prison cell at Florence. Said it was twice as big as his room in Earl's Court back in London, back in the 80s when he was on the run from the Greensboro grand jury. He seems to have issues with animals. Keeps trying to kill all the ducks in the pond out back, sets traps for them, tries to sneak up on them and beat them to death. He has this big aquarium full of fish, and he'll sit watching them for hours. He has 2 cats, and the fish drive him crazy, and he thinks that's funny as hell. He reads a lot, nothing since 1914, a lot of Dickens and whatnot. Like he's trying to crawl back inside the past when here he done made the future for all of us. I asked him about it once, and he told me he's done what he come here to do. He ain't interested in this world anymore, and the only reward he wants is to live in the 19th century for the rest of his life. Says his main goal in the afterlife is to get a blowjob from Emily Bronte. Wants her to Wuthering Heights. Not Charlotte, because she was an ugly, bossy little bitch, and Jane Eyre was soppy, subjective hackwork, whatever the hell that means. I wouldn't know. I'm still trying to finish Moby Dick I started in 7th grade. He really enjoys it when we bring children, said the French-Canadian girl. Z staffs kids, or from Z local Lebensborn. He is happiest when he is playing with Zem, especially very young ones, toddlers. He helps Zem build with blocks and race Zere toy cars. I made a joke with him once. I asked him if he was in his second childhood. He said no, my first. He really loves the kids, but he sure hates them ducks, commented the SS man. Colonel, he will most certainly try to beg tobacco from you, said the young nurse anxiously. Z doctors all agree he mustn't have it. He is still quite active for a man of his incredible age, but his body is as fragile as glass. Even something like a temporary carbon monoxide intake from smoking could kill him. How is his mind these days? Asked Redmond. I keep hearing that he's senile. He goes in and out, replied the SS man. Not so much senility as it is he just gets crotchety and foul-mouthed and very weird. With adults, never with Z children, said the girl. He wants to take long walks in Z woods alone, which we can't allow because he might get lost or hurt, and so he tries to sneak away. We wanted to put an ankle bracelet on him so we can find him if he wanders off, but Z state president said it would be too much Z indignity since he is such a great man. We had to take his guns away, as horrible and disrespectful as that sounds, in view of what he did so that we'd have the right to keep and bear arms. Because he was a danger to himself and others, said the male officer. He kept getting drunk and shooting out his, H. Covington, window at anything that moved, ducks on the lake or squirrels in the trees or birds. Or just shooting out other windows, laughing and cackling like a loon. Where on earth does he get drink? Asked Nell, astonished. I'm damned if I know, snapped the SS lieutenant in exasperation. We found everything from whole beer kegs to mason jars of moonshine to vintage champagne bottles in his room. He even got hold of a big bottle of 200-year-old Napoleon brandy once, and he wouldn't give it to me unless I helped him drink it. I ought have just took it away from him, but damn it, he's the reason there are any white people left in the world. And I got to admit, it was damned fine sippin' liquor. I go up and find them both drunk and singing about shipping those niggers back, said the nurse in exasperation. Hit wore a old hat nanny song ma daddy taught me, said the lieutenant defensively. Duty is a harsh taskmaster sometimes, Lieutenant, commiserated Redmond with a straight face. But how does he get drink? Asked Nell again. I think he has this underground network of supporters who smuggle hooch to him somehow, said the SS man. That's the only way I can figure it. Well, he'd be an expert at that, chuckled Redmond. I recall that many years ago, long before the revolution, and even before the migration, the old man was famous within the movement for being able to survive with just a few very loyal supporters. Sounds to me like he's retained the knack. Yeah, well, you can laugh about it, Colonel, but you ain't the one who's gone have to explain to Corby Morgan how the old man done drunk himself to death on Ma watch, snapped the SS lieutenant. You a Carolina man yourself? Asked Redmond. Yes, sir, Wilkes County, up towards the mountains. I've been home about 6 years now. How'd you know? I recognized the accent. How is it back in the old country these days? Not good. Were a lot of white people there once, but not no more. Nothing left except real old folks who don't speak Spanglish. All. Mexicans and Filipinos and Gooks and Somalis now. My family, we was among the last to leave for the homeland. That was one reason they chose me for this detail. The old man was from Carolina, originally, and maybe they figured... You. Say you from back home, sir? Asked the young officer. I was really young when we came home, but yes, a place called Chapel Hill. Don't recall much, but I remember my Uncle Matt had the same speech. Way before your time. Matt Redmond? Gasped the officer. Yeah. He was a great man, sir, Carolina's noblest and bravest son, said the officer in awe. It is my honor to meet you. Matt Redmond was a great man, yes. I'm Don Redmond, and I'm not. How was your trek home, LT? Kinder rough, said the young man with an embarrassed smile. Me and my brother and my sister Jenny and her man worked our way west with whatever fake papers we could get. Then when we hit the DMZ in Montana, we went into the woods. We were all fairly experienced, did a lot of hunting back home, and we were almost able to make it, but I think some damned heat sensor or something tripped us up. We took the gap outside Holter Dam in the Missoula salient. The young man's face saddened. We ran into a Yankee patrol lying in ambush when we were within a few hundred yards of the border, which up thar is some little creek the name of which I never got. They weren't real Yankees, they was muds of some kind, talking some language or other. We Cullises, we all made it. Jenny's boyfriend, Kevin M.C. Namara, a real Yankee kid from up Boston way, he didn't. They shot him and tried to drag his body away. Goddamned animals probably wanted to eat him. I think they wanted the bounty, corrected Redmond gently. The United States government now pays $60,000 a head for any white person apprehended trying to enter the Republic, dead or alive. Maybe. Anyway, I had an old Magnum from my granddaddy that was a sheriff, and he also had some ammunition stashed he told us about when he was on his deathbed. The cartridges were old, but they were factory, not reloads, and so they still worked. I shot a couple of the muds and they ran off. We humped Kevin across, H. Covington. The creek, bleeding like a fountain. The SS picked us up on the white side and the medics did all they could, but he was dead. I calculate Kevin actually died on homeland soil, so he got what he wanted. I'm glad. He was a good man, Yankee or not. Anyway, I didn't have no skills or nothing. In North Carolina, they don't let white boys into college no more. Leastwise, not if they like girls. Whites gotta have a so-called character reference from the right people in order to get beyond high school, only they're really the wrong people. So I joined the army here in the Republic. Soon as I did my 3 years in the gray, I put in for the black. I calculate I owe the Corps. I see, said Redmond. That was an honorable decision on your part, comrade. Comrade? Asked Lieutenant Cullis, brightening. You a Nazi, sir? I guess I am too. I had to read White Power and study the 25 points of the NSDAP and the Cotswolds Declaration, and the 10 principles in the NSWPP program, and answer questions on them in order to get into the SS. It all made sense to me. I am a National Socialist, and I am also a detective. That carries with it a certain natural skepticism. Son, you made SS lieutenant in 3 years. You are placed in charge of the detail guarding the father of our country, and you expect me to believe this Jethro Bodine act? Inquired Don curiously. I calculate I'm qualified for my job. Did I mention the time when I was 16 and Sister J was 13 and some niggers laid hands on her, sir? Said Cullis quietly. They never touched a white girl again. Or any girl. You know, there was a time when white men would have done nothing about that, commented Redmond. Then they weren't men, they were yaller dogs. Did I mention what happened to the Somali cops and the FBI men who came after me for hate crime? I still don't think they found 'em all where I left 'em to rot up on Sourwood Mountain or Candletop. I lived in the woods for a few years before we decided to risk coming home. Jenny and Kevin and others bringing me food and powder. Powder? Asked Nell. Because of the Schumer Act hit war kinda hard to get hold of proper weapons and ammo, so I snuck into a machine shop in Wilkesboro, and I made myself a black powder rifle, explained Cullis. Hit wore a flintlock, old Kentucky Daniel Boone type. We had a lot of flints up on Candletop, and you can melt down fishing sinkers and cast old-timey lead balls out of them things. You can pan the sodium nitrate out of fertilizer and mix it with sulfur and charcoal, and you got yourself black powder. Kept me full of venison and squirrel and rabbit, and I popped me some muds with it as well. Still got that old homemade piece of mine back in my locker at the SS barracks. Anyway, all that time we heard stories about this place, this country far to the northwest, a country where there weren't nothing but people who looked like us. Sometimes we didn't even believe that such a place really existed, that it was just something the Jews made up to justify what they were doing to us, but we knew that we had to come here and see. And always we heard of this one name, a name now spoken only in whispers in his own land of birth, the name of that old man sitting down there by the lake cussing the ducks. Do you have any idea what I will do to anyone who ever attempts to harm him? There's no need for me to wonder. The SS does not choose men like you lightly, son. I know that. Those pips on your shoulder tell me that you passed some of the most extensive psychological analysis and testing in the world. If you weren't the best man for this detail, you wouldn't be here. Glad you made it past the gap, troop, said Redmond. Sister J found herself anybody yet? Yes, sir, a German immigrant to the homeland like us, a commo engineer, real fine feller named Johann. They're expecting their first baby in about 2 months. The scan says it's a boy, and Yo and Jenny agreed he's going to be named Kevin. Horse Kevin Barkman?
And when are you two going to quit fooling around on the back stairs when the old man isn't looking and get married?
Inquired Redmond. The French girl blushed. Monsieur, she protested. I'm a detective, remember, he reminded her. So I detect. I ain't actually asked Celine yet, mumbled the young man, totally nonplussed. I mean, hell, she's a nurse, she's educated. H. Covington. And I'm just a Peckerwood from down in Carolina. I reckon she knows how I feel about her, though. I know, said the French girl, her eyes downcast. You heard the lady. She knows. I suggest you get on the stick, son. We need some time alone with the old man, and that will provide you with an excellent opportunity to remedy that little omission. It might do at that, agreed Cullis. Colonel, if you will follow me, I will be honored to take you to the President Emeritus of the Northwest American Republic. They found the ancient creature sitting on a marble bench looking out over the lake, scowling at the ducks as if they were vile enemies badly in need of chastisement. As they watched, he tossed bread to them, finally luring one of the birds onto land and close enough to him. Then he lashed out with his heavy silver-topped blackthorn cane with surprising speed. But he was not fast enough. The ducks scuttled back into the water, swallowed the bread, and quacked at the old man. It sounded for all the world like a jeer. In the far-off, largely unremembered time when Aryan racial nationalism in North America had numbered only a few thousand scattered, fragmented, and dysfunctional people in 100 factions, who did not yet dream of coalescing into a nation, one of the movement's favorite pastimes had been smearing and vilifying the old man. Don recalled that one of the more idiotic accusations against the former General Secretary and State President Emeritus was that he had weighed 300 pounds. This had never been anywhere nearly true, but Don remembered some old photos, and he knew that the man before him had once indeed been a portly and Falstaffian character, bearded and often sporting red suspenders and a broad-brimmed hat. Other enemies of the media and Judaic persuasion had called him an evil Santa Claus. The massive thick body and the suspenders were gone now, although the beard remained, thin and straggly. The man, who was now well entered onto his second century, settled back on the bench and leaned on the heavy blackthorn cane with the wrought silver head, patiently waiting for another of the ducks to come within striking distance. His hands were white and his knuckles swollen and gnarled, riddled with liver spots. As of old, a broad-brimmed fedora perched rakishly on his head, which beneath the hat was as bald as an egg. His body was shrunken, and his shoulders were stooped. The white beard was stained brown with ill-gotten nicotine around veal-colored lips. It flowed from his gaunt face down over a sunken chest. He wore a tweed jacket, brown corduroy trousers, and soft leather Brogan-style shoes. His eyes were small and black, sunken in mounds of pallid flesh, and he muttered to himself as Don and Henny Nell approached. The father of his country no longer resembled Falstaff. Now he looked and sounded like an insane garden gnome trying to beat ducks to death. "Barking mad, Exe," whispered Henny Nell, shaking his head sadly. "Good morning, Mr. President Emeritus," said Don formally. "I am Colonel Donald Redmond from the Bureau of State Security, and this is my partner, Sergeant Hendrik Nell." "Guaimora Sargant," said the old man, continuing to stare out at the lake. "Ho Gandit met Juvan Mora?" "En Bike God en Bike Slegs," replied Nell in surprise. "Dankie, meneer Staatspresident. Kan ik vraag u van waar het jugelé die Afrikaans taal om praat? I was fortunate enough to see South Africa before you hairy-backed rock spiders threw it away. You Afrikaner idiots voted yourself out of existence on March 17, 1992, said the old man. I remember the day. I was sitting in an empty corridor in at the Morgan Grenfell Merchant Investment Bank in London. I was a security guard, making sure no one crept in to steal the rich people's money. Tofino's twits, Gormless gits, Thatcher's children. That's where I was the day South Africa died. That is where I was when our folks' youngest child disemboweled herself. Now I suppose you want us to invade South Africa and do what your fathers didn't have the guts to do? I want what every South African and Rhodesian who ever came here wants, said Nell. I want to go back to my own true Friesland. Your people are now almost gone, Henny, Redmond reminded him gently. There are more Afrikaners here in the homeland than there are remaining in South Africa. H. Covington, it doesn't matter. Jan van Riebeek started with less than 100 men. We can do it again if we ever get the chance. Give us the guns, Meneer Staatspresident. Give us the weapons, the transport, the supplies, and some money, and we'll do it ourselves, said Nell. I wanted to do just that, Jong, croaked the old man, many years ago when it might have been possible. That is one of the reasons I am now emeritus. I suppose I should be glad they sent me here instead of having me whacked, pretending Zog did it and making me a goddamned martyr. Pat Brennan and his so-called pragmatic tendencies said I was endangering the existence of the Northwest Republic. Got to live in the real world and all that crap. Threw my own words back at me. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. The existence of the Republic is not important. The existence of the Aryan race is. My views on the matter did not carry. They never did, not really. The result is that I am no longer state president, and I'm no longer in a position to do any damage to anything except these damn ducks. Can't do that either anymore. That Chawbacon up at the house and his French chippy took my guns away. Any relation to Matt Redmond? Asked the old man of Don. I have the honor to be his nephew, sir, said Don. Any man who bears that name is always welcome in my company, Colonel. Matt and me go back a while, you know. Yes, sir, I know. Chapel Hill High School, class of 1971, the both of us. Back in '70, after Kent State, we spent a great springtime afternoon pelting hippies and commies with rocks and full milk cartons from the lunchrooms on the high school campus. What is a hippie? Asked Henny Nell curiously. The old man ignored him. God almighty, do you believe I was once 16 years old? I don't believe it myself, most days. Matt went his way, and I went mine. Matt used to say about me that there but for the grace of God went he. I said the same thing about him. Matt's dead now, isn't he? Yes, sir. Many years ago. Heather, too? Yes, sir. I kind of thought so, but my memory plays tricks sometimes. Heather was a fine woman. He lucked out there, so I often heard him say, sir. Tori's still alive, though. And Big Bill Vitale. He's a general in the SS now. Oh yeah, Bill Clinton's byblow. The one Matt and Heather sent to Sicily so the Mafia could hide him from Zog. Good for him. They ever tell you that story? Yes, sir, replied Don. Actually, you may recall that yourself told us that story. It is now recognized throughout the Republic as one of our most heroic sagas. Your novel about those events was seminal. My novel was, and is, a facile piece of crap, replied the old man. It was written in the heat of immediacy before the true implications of those events during the age of the first Clinton were evident. It is a museum piece, and not a very interesting one. It is a cameo snapshot of an epoch of what we now know was very minor madness, although we were really hot and bothered by it at the time. That novel is hopelessly dated. It is completely insufficient to do justice to the times and to the characters, and it deserves to be cast onto the dung heap of history. Events had already passed it by 3 months after its publication. That is the problem when one writes of contemporary events, and why I always preferred historicals. The situation that existed in the year 1999, when I wrote that book, is now completely irrelevant to anything in the real world. There was a time when we thought the Clintons were the be-all and end-all of liberal evil, and in truth they were bad enough. We forgot the terrible evil that could be done by the pale and soulless white men in the business suits. We forgot that from democracy steps forth the cruelest of tyrants. Little did we know the cataclysm that would follow. The truly bad craziness started afterward, when Bush II staged his coup in 2000, and all of a sudden the Constitution was dead, and we had a president who was not elected but appointed by the Supreme Court. A president who was a tool of the most black-hearted and inhuman forces in history, and a moron to boot. Bill Clinton was a wretch and a murderer, a drug-addicted asshole, and a traitor who sold military secrets to the Chinese, but he never tried to conquer the world like his bird-brained successor did. Matt and Heather and Tori were genuinely heroic figures beyond any ability of my ridiculously inadequate keyboard fingers to portray. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What is it? You want to put a suit on me and trot me out like a department? H. A. Covington. Store dummy at some damn ceremonial bullshit function or other. Fine by me, I could use a day out. But I want you to gimme a box of stogies, good ones, and a gallon jug of Jack Daniels or cognac, one of the two. If you want a speech, I'll do that too, and I promise I won't cuss. But for speeches, I charge 2 boxes of cigars and 2 gallons of hooch. How you get it past the SS and into my grubby little paws is something for you to figure out. No, sir, we don't need you for any public or ceremonial occasion. I would just like to ask you a few questions. That comes with a price, too, the old loon grunted. You smoke those same Dominican cigars your Uncle Matt did? When I can get them, said Don. I don't have any on me, I'm afraid. I do have a rolled Havana, though. Covetous greed flared in the old man's black, fathomless eyes. That Wilkes County hillbilly up there at the house won't let me have any smokes, but me being a living goddamned icon and all that crap, they won't actually take it away from me if you give me one, he said. Odin might strike him down with lightning, me being such a godlike critter and all. Sir, I need some information from you, said Don. If I give you this cigar and endanger your health against the advice of your physicians, will you promise to help me by telling me the truth as best you can remember it? Now why would you speak so disrespectful to the father of your country, young man? Snarled the old man. Because I really do need to know some things, and I would rather not waste your time and mine if it turns out you're really crazy as a coot like they say, replied Redmond calmly. Nell gasped in horror at such blasphemy. Redmond quickly waved him to silence. The old man cackled with laughter, slapping his knee. Hot damn, son, I ain't been insulted in years, he gasped in mirth. Jesus Christ, on a raft, that's music to my ears. I used to feed off their hatred and their insults, their lies and their slanders. Hate, boy, hate kept me young all those years. I've had nothing but respect and flattery and mooncalf adoration for years now, and I'm so sick of it I could puke. Reckon your uncle told you that about me, didn't he? He did, in fact, once remark to me that you were like a punch-drunk boxer who came to enjoy the pain of being hit, agreed Don. Yeah, I eat it like candy. Guess it must be important, then, said the old man. Okay, give me that stogie and then tell me what the hell it is you want. Whatever it is, I'll give it to you straight. That's what I spent my life doing, son, giving it to the world straight. I'm obliged for the opportunity to do it again. Redmond pulled out one of Morgan's cigars, removed it from the tube, cut it, and placed it in the old man's mouth, then lit it with a match. Nell was rigid with horror. Sir, he hissed. The nurse said. This is more important, Sergeant, said Redmond evenly. More important than my life? Asked the old man keenly as he drew in on the cigar. It may be, yes, Mr. President Emeritus, replied Don. Good for you. Duty overrides all. Thanks. Hot damn, that's cool and fine on my tongue. And to save you the time probing and guessing, I'm pretty much in my right mind today, at least as much as I ever was. Damn, that's fine tobacco. Gift of the gods, boy, gift of the gods. Okay, son, spill it. Sir, I'm here to consult you on a case I'm working on now for the Bureau of State Security, replied Redmond. It must be something really obscure for you to come looking for me, kid. I've been out of touch with pretty much everything political, ever since Pat Brennan booted me out here to crumble into dust because he was scared I'd invade South Africa, restore the white government, beat him in the general election, make the NS tendency the dominant force in Parliament, and establish a national socialist state. Brennan and that little pissant who stabbed me in the back and took over my job as General Secretary. Civil War, my ass. Brennan's dead now, you know. Old age, no less. But hell, I asked for it. 100 years on, and I still haven't learned never to trust anyone in the movement. Been betrayed so often by my own people, I must have some kind of karmic sign taped on my back that says, kick me. So what can I do for boss, Colonel? Redmond was silently relieved that the old gentleman had elected not to pursue an obsessive political tirade that would have made it difficult for Don to wrestle him back on track. Sir, I would like to ask you why, as one of your last political acts, before you retired, you asked President Brennan to call off the War Prevention Department's hunt for Trudy Griner? H. Covington. Because she didn't do it, grunted the old man. Trudy Griner wasn't the traitor. Magtig, exclaimed Nell. I mean, how do you know that, Mynheer? I got bored once pragmatic tendency threw my ass out, grumbled the ancient curmudgeon. I was sitting in a big fancy office down there in Olympia with no real power, waiting for my loyal comrades to work out the details of where and how they were going to bury me alive where I couldn't embarrass them anymore. With all my ranting and raving about duty and ethics, and all the other things we've always tried to avoid like the plague, I had a lot of time on my hands. There was this little girl file clerk who believed all that propaganda crap about how I was this brilliant leader and philosopher king, yada yada yada. She thought I was some kind of revolutionary god, and I was able to persuade her to feed me some special reading material against orders, able to persuade her to do some other things too, but we won't get into that. Anyway, I spent my time catching up on all the things that went on when I was in prison, the stuff I missed out on while the fighting was going on. I took the trouble to actually read the raw case file on Ravenhill, said the old man. All the statements taken for the trial in absentia of volunteer Gertrude Griner on the charge of racial treason and collaboration with the enemy. I spotted something no one else ever had. The Fat Po defector Arthur M.C. Bride stated that the head nigger in charge of the federal ambush was informed of the column's location and projected route at almost exactly 2 o'clock on the morning of August 1st, after which he ordered his men out to the choppers and dropped them into the ambush zone at Ravenhill Ranch. You with me so far? Yes, sir, I know, confirmed Redmond. Sergeant Major M.C. Bride is still alive, and we have spoken with him. M.C. Bride was charge of quarters at the Fat Po barracks, and he heard Woodrow Coleman take the call on his wireless phone. M.C. Bride also stated that it was unusual for Major Coleman to be up and about, or at least up and about while sober, at that time of the morning. It was obvious to him that Coleman had been told something was up, and he was waiting for the call. The Hill of the Ravens. And where was Trudy Griner at 2 o'clock that morning? demanded the old man. By all accounts, she was still at the safe house in Hoodsport, along with Murdoch and the rest, said Redmond. Right. Now, Colonel, do you agree that as a working proposition we can take it that the statements given by the 8 survivors are true, with the possible exception of one traitor who may be lying, if such a person exists? We more or less have to, sir, conceded Redmond. At this distance in time, their statements then and their recollections now are virtually all we've got by a way of evidence. I agree. Now, there are some crucial times in those witnesses' statements that we need to peg down. The first is the receipt of the call by the federal commander at, or almost exactly at 2 o'clock a.m. Sir, when I was reviewing the case file a few days ago at Boss headquarters, I noticed the time element. Murdoch's decision to take Highway 119 and then cut off on the county road by Ravenhill Ranch before they reached Shelton must have been made either right at around 2 in the morning or before that, because the informer gave Fat Poe that information. Fine, I'll buy that, agreed the old man. So the informer was in a position to know that exact route that the column would take into Port Orchard. That could be any of them. But with Miss Greiner in plain view at 2 in the morning, the big question is, who made the call? The official version is that somehow Trudy Greiner found some excuse, slipped into the bathroom and make a hurried call tipping off Fatty while she was surrounded by men and women who would kill her if she was caught. It would have taken brass balls to do it, but everyone who ever knew her agrees that she was a fearless and resourceful young woman. I have since learned that at least insofar as anyone who was present can recall, this was impossible for her to do. Not only did Ed MC Canlis collect and turn off all cell phones, but Trudy's phone wasn't even working because the satellite serving her unit had crashed. I am also aware of some other discrepancies, but I'm sorry, I seem to be interrupting you, sir. Please proceed. H. Covington. You wear that green, white, and blue ribbon, Sonny, pointed out the old man. Although, Jesus, you must have been young. Very young, sir, agreed Redmond with a nod. Back in those days, did you ever attend a meeting in a safe house? A few, said Don, like the one I delivered papers to in Bellevue. And what was the very first thing the officer in charge ordered all the others to do? Asked the old man. Turn off their cell phones and pagers, so an accidental incoming call or page didn't tip off the enemy's satellite monitoring, or other electronic surveillance that there was anyone in the facility, repeated Redmond patiently. And after that, he also swept the personnel present for wires, said Redmond. Yes, sir, I thought of that. Just as he swept the whole house beforehand. Volunteer MC Canlis and Volunteer Frierson have both stated in no uncertain terms that they checked the house out from the ground up and it was clean, and that they ran metal and fiber optic sensors over every participant in the meeting, beginning with Commandant Murdoch, as Murdoch always insisted be done. We are assuming that is true, unless Frierson or else one or both of the Miss Canlises are traitors, and were lying. Right. On that particular night, Ed MC Canlis, a particularly conscientious volunteer, swears that he made damn sure this was done. Lars Frierson, equally conscientious, backs him up. I see no reason to disbelieve them. Have you any evidence that we should? No, sir. Then we'll take what they tell us at face value. Are we still on the same page? Asked the old man. Sorry to come on like such a know-it-all and act like the great detective revealing the murderer in the drawing room at the end of The Mystery, but I never get a chance to talk to anyone about anything serious these days. Yes, sir. So we agree that Gertrude Greiner did not make any kind of call at all from her own cell phone, then or later, because the communication satellite was down in every sense of the word, and also due to NVA security precautions. We can also accept that no one was wired. That means that the communication with the enemy did not occur from the vicinity of the central meeting in the safe house. It came from someone who was not present at the meeting, and yet who was in a position to know the planned route and order of battle for the next day's operation. Now, the Greiner gal left the safe house, at what time? Approximately 3 o'clock in the morning, said Redmond, which is the last time anyone in the NVA ever saw her. I would dearly love to know what she was doing during the 4 hours between the time she left and the time she was officially AWOL from the medical aid station at 7 that morning. Any ideas on that, Mr. President Emeritus? 1 or 2. But we're still at 3 o'clock in the morning. Trudy Greiner has just left. The meeting has been dismissed. Whereupon the column did what? They moved out, some in cars and others on foot. They moved overland about a mile to the lumberyard where the vehicles to be used in the attack were being held in readiness. The convoy was assembled there, seating was assigned, and so forth. The mortar truck and the McCandless's Oldsmobile moved out one way, along with the Kenworth flatbed containing the mortar tubes. The two vans, the second truck, and the green pickup scout vehicle went another. They left the lumberyard at what time? Approximately 5:30 a.m., sir, and Monkey Meat Coleman got the call at 2 a.m., continued the old man. 2 in the morning, yes, sir. As the column were pulling out, he and his goons were already setting the ambush on the road past Ravenhill Ranch. Now go back to the court of inquiry transcript, said the old man. Look at M.C. Bride's testimony, he said when his Fat Po group were briefed before they left base and went down into the ambush that morning. They were told by Major Moncoid Coleman to be on the lookout for 2 vans, one blue and one white, and one Kenworth truck with wooden slat sidings. Yes, sir, I saw that. Those are in fact the vehicles that the column used, agreed Redmond. So, H. A. Covington. Don't worry, son, I ain't wandering. I do have a point, but you seem to be missing it. I'll pitch it again a little bit slower. When Coleman got that call from the informer or someone who was hooked to the informer, what was he told to look out for? He was told to set his ambush for a green Dodge pickup truck scout vehicle, which Coleman ordered his men to let pass, and then a blue van, a white van, and the Kenworth truck which carried the— Christ in heaven! Bellowed Redmond in sudden astonished chagrin. Comes the dawn! Chuckled the old man. What, Colonel? Asked Nell, uncomprehending. Redmond turned and stared at Nell. How the hell did the informer know what color the pickup and the vans were? Demanded Redmond. By everything we know, Trudy Griner never went anywhere near the staging area with the vehicles, and if she did, it would have been after 3 in the morning, when she left the conference. Somebody would surely have seen her, including Palmieri and Saltovic and Leach. Surely at least one of them would remember her being there. But Coleman got the call at 2 a.m. Ergo, the informer was someone who had been involved in vehicle selection, transport, fueling, and staging prior to the meeting in the Hoodsport safe house, exclaimed the old man triumphantly. Which Trudy Griner was not. That wasn't part of her job. We also know that whoever made the call was not in the meeting at the Hoodsport safe house. It is possible that the person who made the call was a secondary contact, but I myself have always been of the opinion that the person who called Coleman was the actual informant, mostly because of the incredible danger which would have been attached to bringing someone else into something like that. Not to mention having to share that humongous reward. I'll need to go back to all of them now and find out who was involved in the preliminary staging and servicing of the convoy's vehicles, moaned Redmond. Even if 7 of the 8 are telling me the truth, it may be impossible to determine after all this time who had actually seen the vans prior to the meeting. No need, said the old man. We can still do some elimination with what we've got. Time, place, and opportunity, son. Check the statements of Dr. Joseph Cord, and also of Lars Frierson, and also of Edward M.C. Canless and Brittany M.C. Canless. Bear in mind we are assuming for the time being that they are true, lacking any evidence that they are not. Cord and Frierson attended the entire meeting in the living room of that bungalow from beginning to end, so they could not have made the call. Ed M.C. Canless was also there at all times, in his capacity as security officer for the sit-down, and his wife was there as well, according to both their statements.
They indicated that they arrived at the safe house that afternoon so they could go in first and make sure everything was hunky-dory, and then let Murdoch and the rest know it was safe to move in.
They specifically stayed away from the lumber yard where the heavy artillery was waiting, in case they were being followed or tracked by satellite.
They probably at that point didn't even know where most of the other members of the column were. Frank Palmieri and Dragutin Saltovic did stage the mortar truck at the lumberyard, along with the other vehicles. But as of 2 a.m. when the trader called, Monkey Meat, and dropped the dime, they didn't know that they were going to the target area separately. Whoever made the call knew that the mortar truck would be taking a separate route, but for reasons known only to himself neglected to mention the mortar truck at all when he ratted our people out to Fatty. So that rules Palmieri and Saltovic out. Cord did go to the lumberyard briefly to run a final check on the loading and detonation system and the hydraulic lift to raise the mortars in position, after which he proceeded to Poulsbo with a carload of medical supplies.
But the informer's call had already been made at 2 a.m. So Cord, Palmieri, Saltovic, Frierson, and the MC Canlises seemed to be in the clear, as well as Trudy Griner. "That leaves Leach and Vitale," said Nell in a neutral voice. "They were in the lumberyard area prior to the meeting breaking up, and no one has accounted for their whereabouts at 2 a.m. Leach and Vitale were both just gun-toters then. Vitale, a green kid just off the plane from Italy," said the old man. "Yeah, it could have been them, maybe, but would they have known about the mortar truck splitting up from the main convoy and taking a separate route into town, any more than Saltovic or Palmieri? No one at the yard was actually informed of that disposition until Murdoch and the officers arrived at a little past 3. Call was made at 2, gents, the H. of Covington. Call was made at 2, and if it had been made by someone in or around the staging area, they would have told Coleman to watch for the mortar truck as well. Whoever made it had some kind of prior knowledge of Murdoch's plan of attack on Port Orchard, someone who was an officer or otherwise involved on a command level, which, to be frank, Mynheer Stott's precedent does not fit any of our survivors, with the half-assed exception of Dr. Cord, who was a technician, but not a strategist or field commander," said Nell. "Nor does it fit Trudy Griner for that matter," commented Redmond. "She was support and liaison but had nothing whatsoever to do with actual military decisions or planning." "My God! You mean to say, sir, that you believe the informant was someone else? Someone else in the column who didn't survive the ambush?" said Nell in horror. "Someone we don't know about. Someone who thought he had a deal with the Americans to let him live, but who was betrayed." "Sighs. If that's the case, then we might never find out what the hell happened that day." "Sir," asked Redmond, "do you have any idea at all who such a person might be?" "Yes," said the old man. "Don't worry, son. I won't run the melodrama out. I can't give you an actual name, but in a general way, yes, I think I know who it was. I think it was whoever Trudy Griner went to meet after she left the Hood Sports safe house at 3 o'clock on the morning of August 1st. Someone who knew what was going to happen, and who either forcibly detained her from going to the aid station or else persuaded her that she was about to be hopelessly compromised, and she'd better desert if she wanted to live." "How do you know any such person exists, Mr. President Emeritus?" asked Redmond. "It doesn't take 4 hours to get from Hoodsport to Polsbo, Colonel, not even in the dark. But more close to home, volunteers always moved in pairs, son, whenever possible," said the old man. "Especially when they were closing in on a target. It simply wasn't a good idea to rely on loners not to lose their nerve, not to get lost, not to fuck up, or not to get caught or delayed through no fault of their own. Why did Trudy Griner leave the house on her own that morning? That looks like a potentially dangerous violation in procedure to me. But was it? I don't think she was violating procedure. I think she was meeting someone else for some purpose we don't know, and she was doing it on Murdoch's orders. Leach and Frierson said they got that impression," Nell reminded him. Redmond took a deep breath and spoke. "Mr. President, Bill Vitale told us he overheard one small snippet of conversation between Commandant Murdoch and volunteer Melanie Young, just before the column pulled out at 5, that indicated to him there might be some kind of rendezvous planned with the Port Townsend flying column. Can you shed any light on that aspect at all?" "No, I can't," said the old man. "Why don't you ask that old hoss who's sitting in my chair down in Longview House right now about that?" "There's never been any suggestion of any such thing," said Redmond evasively. He felt a chill. He had a horrified suspicion he might know who Trudy Griner had been meeting. Nell unwittingly came to his rescue. "But what about the $1 million?" he asked. "Yes," Redmond said. "One almost insurmountable obstacle that we have yet to overcome, Mr. President Emeritus. The $1 million certified check allegedly collected by Trudy Griner first thing on the morning of August 1st, at the opening of business while the bodies of the flying column dead were literally still bleeding. Every which way we turn, we keep coming up against that." "Do you know for a fact that $1 million was collected by Trudy Griner?" asked the old man keenly. "Do you know for a fact that $1 million ever existed at all?" "No, sir," said Redmond morosely. "It did occur to me. We do not know that for a fact. All we have is a few photostats of old Bank of America documents and computer files. We have no idea whether what we are looking at ever existed in the form of 1 million real spendable dollars or not. Did Trudy Griner end up with that money in her kick? If not, who did? We have no idea on Earth, and at this distance in time we have no way to find out. That thought has bedviled me no end, believe me. Any ideas at all, son? Probed the old man. None I want to speak of at the moment, sir, with all due respect, said Redmond in growing despair. H. Covington. Well, why not just wait until Trudy Griner walks across the border on 1022 and see what the hell she has to say about it all? Asked the old man curiously. I get the impression, sir, that the present state president is especially anxious for that not to occur, at least not without some idea of what skeletons might be found by anyone who starts poking through the Ravenhill closet. Redmond rose to go. Mr. President Emeritus, you have been extremely helpful, more so than anyone we've talked to yet. There is one final question I would like to ask you, sir, and I very much hope that you will choose to answer me, and answer me truthfully. And that is, prompted the old man, leaning back and sending long, aromatic swirls of cigar smoke into the air. Exactly who was it who contacted you and warned you that I would be coming, and what I would be asking you about? Asked Redmond levelly. And when did this occur? You know, at my age, senility comes and goes, said the ancient creature, blowing a smoke ring. I can geezer it up real quick. In fact, I feel a real funky, fogey fugue coming on. Maybe that's why you forgot that I never at any point in our conversation informed you that Trudy Griner was coming back on October 22nd, said Don. Maybe so. Son, believe it or not, I do retain some sense of responsibility to this republic I helped to create. I could give you a name and one of two things would happen. Either I'd wake up one night to find Charlie Randall standing over my bed with a pillow in his hands, or else it would explode into a full-scale scandal, the top ripped off a major league can of worms, and them worms crawling all over the Northwest and pooping worm shit all over this country that is the only hope of our race to survive. I'll pass on that, but I'll tell you what I told that individual that I spoke with. I told him that every word I told you would be the truth, and it has been. Thank you, sir, said Redmond. Mynheer Staatspresident, I have a question as well, spoke up Nell suddenly. What on earth do you have against these ducks? The old man grinned at him through a haze of cigar smoke, and all of a sudden they caught a glimpse of the almost satanic malevolence that alone had sustained him through a century, comprised mostly of living hell. They're big, soft white things who just waddle around and do nothing. When they open their mouths, nothing but blat comes out. I always had a problem with big, lazy white things who waddle around and do nothing and just blat when they open their mouths, he said. You see, for 50 years, those were our leaders in the so-called movement. I couldn't crush them then like they deserved, so I crush them now. Or try to. Ain't no better at it now than I was then. He looked out at them. Every one of them has a name. The name of a piece of pale-skinned shit who should have died in mortal agony long ago, if there was any justice at all. But there never is any justice. Except what a man takes for himself. Like I said, every one of them has a name. That one over there by the shore, with the dark greasy feathers, that is Matt Cole. That bloated thing out there with the hooked beak is Benny Klassen. He seems to have a habit of molesting the other drakes, and that's how he got his name. The one with the bald head is Tom Metzger. The sleek-looking drake out there is David Duke. Watch him, he'll steal the bread right out of your hand while you're not looking and gamble it away on the riverboat casinos. The sneaky-looking bastard with the black spot on his bill is Pierce. The lazy fuck floating out there at a drunken angle is Eugene Terre Blanche. Which should be of interest to you, Sergeant. Terre Blanche used to fall off his horse during parades, he was so drunk. The prissy little one there, who looks like a faggot, is Martin Webster. And the big fat pompous ass to the right there is John Tyndall. And the others, all the others, I know their names. Before I die, I am going to kill every one of them. I'm sorry to see that you really are insane, sir, said Redmond sadly, shaking his head. Always was, son, always was, chuckled the old man, leaning back on the bench and sending a cloud of ringed cigar smoke rising into the cool autumn air. Nutty as a fruitcake all my life. Sane men didn't revolt against Zog, and sane men damned sure didn't win. H. Covington. That afternoon they both sat in Redmond's office in the Temple of Justice. Henny Nell was turning over various pages in the old Ravenhill file. The day had gone cloudy, and the famous northwest rain was dripping from the windows. It was President Morgan who told him why we were coming, said Nell. Of course it was Morgan. What in God's name is he playing at? Responded Redmond in weary despair. Why this song and dance routine? Why did he bring me into this? Why the hell doesn't he just tell me? My God, I'm family. Is there anyone else we could interview before the 22nd comes? Asked Nell. No one I can think of. Anyone who might help either fled the country after the revolution, or they're dead or just unavailable. You know, I wish to hell we really were the totalitarian state that our enemies accuse us of being. A nationwide identification and location service would certainly be of help. But since we've abolished driver's licenses, unless someone has actually come to the attention of boss, we really have no way of knowing where anyone in this country is, other than picking up the telephone directory. Odd that a so-called fascist state should have that kind of individual liberty, eh? I've tried to find Van der Merwe with no luck. Who? Asked Nell, looking up with interest. J.P. Van der Merwe, the Bank of America branch president who authorized and issued the $1 million check, and who would hopefully remember something about that $1 million transaction on the morning of August the 1st. But he's not in any of the Republic's phone books. He doesn't have a criminal record. And beyond that, we're stumped unless we can pick up his trail some other way. He may be dead. He may be a loyalist who fled the Republic after the Revolution and he's now living in the States or somewhere else. He may be sitting right down there on the mall feeding the pigeons beneath the Rockwell Monument. And we wouldn't know. Sergeant Nell riffled through the file and found the bank record photostats. Then he held them up to the light, studying them. The devil of it is, whatever John C. is afraid I will turn up, he's wrong. I still have no idea on earth who the traitor is, complained Redmond in weary despair. The Hill of the Ravens. Nell looked up from the papers. Oh, that's no Shupa, XA. I know who it is, eh? What the hell do you mean by that? Said Redmond irritably. I mean just what I said. I know who the traitor is, because I know now there never was any $1 million payoff. This whole bank transaction is a fraud, and I know who created it. Then Henny Nell told Don Redmond the name of the traitor who had betrayed the Olympic flying column, and explained how he knew. Damn, I am a fool, muttered Redmond bitterly. Dit make nix. I just happen to have a little bit of background you didn't, said Nell with a shrug. How could you? The question is, sir, how in the name of God are we going to prove it? I am as positive as I can be that he's our man, but after almost 4 decades, where do we look for any hard evidence? I doubt any even exists. I don't see any choice that we have other than to wait for Trudy Griner to show up and hope she can provide us with something concrete. If she can't, she may still end up carrying the can for Ravenhill. The thing that puzzles me is motive, sighed Redmond. Why, in the name of all that is holy? What possible reason could he have to do such a thing? We could ask him, suggested Nell. You don't make an accusation like this with no proof or evidence, Sergeant. Nor do I know where to even begin to look for any. Unless, it's a long shot, but hell, looks as if we've nothing better to do until the 22nd.